Um, Thank you very much. Am I audible to you guys? Yes, thanks, Mahesh.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Dharmi. Um, Good afternoon, everybody, for joining us today. And I would like to take this opportunity to really thank Citizens International for putting together the Citizens International Youth Summit for the year 2021 amidst these challenging times. And thank you very much, everyone, delegates, participants, award winners, artists, speakers, everybody for joining today. So I want to speak about a very simple idea, about a very simple converging idea about youth and digital citizenship. Um, Usually, when I speak, I tend to project more and make my speeches, but unfortunately, as a victim of the circumstances, I've contracted COVID last week. Regardless, I'll try my level best to keep you engaged throughout. So please bear with me. So very simple idea about idea. Sri Lanka since 1948 for the past 7 decades, right? It has gone through since the post-independence history, has gone through ups and downs in its own track, right? We have had like issues based on rights. Then we have had 30 years of second longest civil war in the world. Then there was again another political upheaval right? Throughout the post-independence history of Sri Lanka, there was a catalyzing force for the conflict within this country was the polarizing mainstream media, right? If you really look at Sri Lankan history, the media has always played between the emotions of the communities, has managed to slice and dice the communities, have managed to drive a bitch between the communities, right? So once we realized this, right, then once the war was over, there was this dialogue, there was this need to build lasting peace, right? So how do we build the lasting peace, right? What are the root causes we need to address? And one of the main root causes which we identified was this vacuum that was created by the mainstream media, right? For far too long, Sri Lankans has depended on the mainstream media to get the narratives, right? To be told what it's like to live in one person's shoes, or what it's like to live in one community's shoes, right? And this was very rampant throughout. I'm not here not on a vendetta against any mainstream media, right? But the simple fact that there was a huge vacuum that was left unexplored. And the idea of digital storytelling was very simple, right? Yes, the mainstream media is going to continue to exist. Yes, it's going to polarize the communities further apart. But why don't we take the skill of telling the stories of your own communities to the young people in our own communities, right? And that was the basic and starting point of digital storytelling, right? The reason why I'm saying it was the basic starting point is, right, it was a very simple realization. All of us has this amazing tool called a smartphone, right? All of us have access to our social medias, right? All of us have a really ready access to audience for our friends, followers who likes our pages and stuff, right? Then why don't we give young people the ability to tell the stories of their communities, right? There was a simple question somebody asked me in one of these classes, right? The simple question is, who can better tell your story, right? Somebody can say their boyfriend or girlfriend can tell, but it's us, right? If somebody could tell my story better, it's me, right? In similar way, if somebody should tell the story of our communities better, it's us, the young people, who know the very essence of our communities, who has been part of the communities, who have lived through the experiences of the communities, can tell these stories better, right? And that is where this idea of digital storytelling started. And it was a very simple idea, right? Let's go to the young people. let's teach them the fundamentals of storytelling. First, let's help them to discover the storytelling in them, right? Let's give them the basic skills of mobile photography. Let's give them the basic skills of mobile filmmaking. Let's help them to do interviews in their communities. Let's help them to extract stories from their communities. Let's teach them what hashtag is. Let's teach them what are some of the digital tools we can use. And let's help them to amplify the stories of their communities, right? And when we started, it started to make massive change in the way young people identified themselves in the digital realm. And they completely took on a different role as digital citizens, right? And it is not a new thing, right? We are here in the Citizens International Youth Summit, right? We have two different identities, right? One is our actual identity, who we are, who Benislos, Thushan, online identities, right? As digital citizens, how do we portray ourselves to the world? And none of us have to pretend that both of these identities are same, right? We intentionally and deliberately create these identities one way or the other. But how do we take up that identity in a response? Really struck us hard was, if at all anybody can really channel this constructive energy of like redefining what responsible digital citizenship, it is the young people, right? It is the young people who understands the potential of this. It is the young people who wants to make a difference, right? That's when we really came together and we really started identifying ourselves as digital citizens. And how, as a digital citizen, how do you responsibly consume information? So in addition to teaching young people the ability to tell their own stories in their communities, we also tell them, okay, how do you become responsible consumers of information? How do you verify information? How do you ask critical questions? How do you develop this critical thinking in you? If somebody is telling you truth or something that is away from the truth, how do you verify these things, right? And both these aspects of becoming a digital storyteller and becoming a responsible digital citizenship has become the core theme of the digital storytelling journey, right? And that is what we have been trailing so far. And today, at this pandemic, right, everything is adopting the role of being on the virtual, right? The new normal, right? Working from continuously, like learning from the online resources, right? But I want to bring your concern to one more critical identity. One of the starking fact about Sri Lanka is that only the 50% of Sri Lankan population is connected online, right? And even out of the 50, only 37% is connected on social media. Sometimes we tend to believe, since we see so many of our friends online, we tend to believe social media is the only world that exists, right? But it is not. But one of the reality is, now are connected online, we are also realizing only once in every 2% is, or young children is able to access education in this pandemic, right? Only once in two people can access the modern resources that are found online. The reason why I want to highlight that fact at this moment right now is that sometimes it's so easy for us to overlook the fact that the growing digital disparity is really screaming for attention for each of us, each of the digital citizens in us, right? So what are we supposed to do, right? The first thing is to develop the cognizance that half the population in our countries, or more than half the population of the country, are left behind in this digital realm. So how do we start filling these gaps, right? As responsible digital citizens, how do we make it as an equitable platform for not only the young people, but anybody who are left behind in this digital realm to access these resources in an equitable fashion, right? Because if you really see, half of the young population left behind without any educational opportunities, is the half of Sri Lankan population is left behind a fighting chance, and which is not correct, right? If you really look at the root causes of this country, with this country's conflict, right, we have always looked, right, the lack of resources, lack of employment opportunities, and the discrimination that has happened in the educational field that has resulted in the loss of thousands and hundreds of thousands of lives. So now we are at a juncture where we can do something, right? And as I've already told, we share two different identities, a digital identity. How are we channeling the resources we have? How are we picking others who are struggling in this digital times, and how do we channel this energy in a positive way, right? And that is the first question I want to leave you with. Secondly, as responsible digital citizens, right, are we telling the stories of our communities? Are we taking ownership of our narratives? Are we saying enough is enough, we don't want to depend on anybody, we want to tell our own stories, we want to tell who we are, and no, we don't want to be identified by any prejudices, we don't want to be identified by any stereotypes, we want to tell the world who we are. I'll just share a simple example before I wrap up my speech. So we teach this case study called Everyday Africa in the digital storytelling class, right? And there was this student from Mullatif. Mullatif is a district that was worst affected by war, and it was the final war zone. And one of the classes, he came to me and said, sir, for far too long, the district I come from has been identified as a post-war district, sir, and that is enough. I don't want to be identified by that anymore. And I want to tell the stories of my community. I want to tell the story that we are not just a post-war district anymore. We are a place where there is a lot of hope. We are a place where people are striving hard. We are a place there is a lot of optimism. Yes, we might be poor because of war, but we are trying hard. But we are trying hard to economically uplift ourselves, to find resilience in us. And he went ahead and started a storytelling movement called Everyday Mulathi. I'll invite all of you to check it out. And similarly, there was a student from Kathankudi. Kathankudi has come to the scrutiny after the Easter Sunday attacks that happened in Sri Lanka in 2019. And one of these girls came and said, so Kathankudi always is seemed by people as a place that is where the terrorist haven is. But I want to break that stereotype, sir. And she has started a storytelling movement. So I want to invite all of you to really tap into the power as a digital citizen you have, right? To really tap into the power of storytelling you all have. Just use this simple tool. Tell the stories of your communities, break the stereotypes, and say, nobody else is going to tell our story but us, and we will redefine the narratives that have been haunting us for a long time, and we will retake ownership of our narratives. Thank you.